Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dig into how one company tackled what seems like an impossible problem, building the digital backbone for a nation that's scattered across 17,000 islands. And in the process, they became an absolute titan of telecommunications.
So just think about that for a second. How do you connect over 270 million people when they live on thousands and thousands of different islands? It's this massive challenge, and it makes Indonesia one of the most complex and fascinating mobile markets in the entire world. In a place like this, digital connection isn't just a nice-to-have. It's an absolute lifeline.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Go back to the early 2000s. Mobile phones are just exploding in Indonesia, right? And all the network operators are in this frantic race to get their service to more people. This created this huge, unprecedented demand for one very specific, very important piece of hardware, the cell tower.
Now, to move fast, these carriers went with what we call an asset-light strategy. And what does that mean? Well, think about it. Owning and maintaining thousands and thousands of giant steel towers, that's a huge expense. They realized they didn't want to own the steel. They just wanted to rent space on it. And that one simple decision, it basically kicked the door wide open for a whole new type of company to come in and just take over.
And that's exactly where our story really begins. Enter PT Sarana Menora Nusantara, or SMN for short. Through their main subsidiary, Protolindo, they came in with this brilliant two-part strategy to not just play the game, but to completely run the table.
Okay, so what was this magic strategy? It was actually super simple, and that's what made it so powerful. Build and acquire. On one side, they did build-to-suit, which is just a fancy way of saying if a client needed a new tower somewhere, boom, they'd build it for them. But at the same time, they were always hunting, buying up entire portfolios of towers from their competitors. It was this perfect 1-2 punch that led to just insane growth.
But here's the real kicker, the genius part of their whole business model. See, once you built the tower for that first main client, that anchor tenant, your big costs are pretty much locked in. So every time a new carrier comes along and wants to put their gear on that same tower, that's called co-location, well, that's pretty much all profit. It's a money-making machine.
So you can imagine this build and acquire model, it wasn't just working, it was incredibly, ruthlessly effective. It's how SMN built this absolute empire of steel, a network that literally crisscrosses the entire Indonesian archipelago. And when you look at their timeline, you can see just how aggressive and consistent they were. This wasn't some lucky accident, this was a calculated conquest. From their big move back in 2008, they just systematically bought out major rivals like KIN, STP, and IBST, year after year after year.
Okay, let's put some numbers to this to really see the scale. Back in 2008, when they were just getting started after their first big move, their whole portfolio looked like this, just over 3,300 towers. Now, you ready? Fast forward to today. Their portfolio has absolutely exploded. We're talking more than a 10-fold increase. I mean, that just perfectly shows you the raw power of that buy strategy.
But you know, the story doesn't stop with towers, because as we all started using more and more data, SMN was smart enough to see that the future wasn't just about building up, it was also about building out. They started this huge strategic pivot to become a full-on digital infrastructure company. And how did they do that? You guessed it, another brilliant acquisition. They picked up a company called iFort. With 4G and then 5G, data needs just went through the roof. So iFort became their engine for everything not tower-related, rolling out this massive fiber optic network. Think of them as the digital highways connecting all those vertical towers.
And you want to see the result of that pivot? Just look at these numbers. It's staggering. Back in 2016, the other revenue category, it was basically a rounding error. Nothing. But by 2022, it had blown up into a business bringing in over 3.2 trillion rupiah. This wasn't just adding a new product. It was a total reinvention, future-proofing the entire company.
Okay, so you've got all this growth, all these acquisitions, but how do you actually pay for it all? What's the financial foundation that holds this whole empire together?
Well, the secret sauce here is super predictable revenue. See, their income isn't coming from one-off sales. It's built on these super long-term contracts with the biggest mobile operators in the entire country. By locking in all the major players as your customers, you create this incredibly stable, predictable stream of cash that you can then use to, well, go out and buy more stuff.
And don't think for a second they're taking their foot off the gas. That core strategy, it's still front and center.
I mean, listen to what their own board said in 2024. The message is crystal clear. Keep growing, keep adding, keep dominating. The conquest is far from over.
So when you step back and look at it all, from the steel towers reaching for the sky to the fiber optic cables buried deep in the ground, SMN's strategy has literally built the foundation for Indonesia's digital future. And that really leaves us with a big question, doesn't it? As our hunger for data becomes more and more insatiable, what's the next frontier for these giants who keep our world connected?